So quick show of hands. Has anyone ever been to Chester? Chester in the UK, yeah. Mm-hmm. Can you picture these half-timbered houses there? Yeah, have you ever been in one? Who's ever been in one? Now, I grew up in an equivalent in Germany, so it was small town Germany. So I grew up in a house that was 400 years old. It was in the middle of a small town, and they have these, this one had like a huge hall in the middle, and that was 400 years ago, that's where they kept livestock. So it was the middle of the town, but still kind of like the cattle would be like collected and be laid out and so on. And so off that hall, there were lots of like little quaint rooms. And as a child, I really loved it. So my parents had a workshop there and a shop, and there were lots of people around, and I would chat to everybody, and I would roam the place, and I would feel like the queen of the place. And when I was a teenager, everything changed. I had a growth spurt, so I grew, like within a year or two. I became the tallest person in my family. I would just picture that house. This house was built for people 400 years ago, and nobody was as tall as me. And so my father had built a bathroom like at the top of the house, and the mirror was about here. So when I wanted to look in the mirror, I either had to kind of like go like this, or I had to sit on the bathtub. That was a good strategy. It was a very tiny bathroom like that. Yeah. The ceilings were about here. However, there were some rooms where the ceilings would dip in the middle, and so I would kind of like, yeah. And so the door frames were, some were here, some were kind of there, and the windows were, yeah. So, or you need to sit down. That's where my quest for bigger places started. When I moved to Berlin as a student, I lived in a very messy kind of like shared flat there, and it was in Tiergarten in Berlin. I don't know if you're familiar with Berlin, in the Hansaviertel, and it's the former diplomats' quarter. And so they had these like in that flat, the large representative rooms at the front, and they had like smaller rooms at the very back. And so I was lucky. I lived in the former library. It was the size of like a small chamber concert hall or something like that. It had 5-meter ceilings, stucco ceilings. It had a large bay window to the river Spree. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that I could breathe. So I was working as a licensed pharmacist, and I also did my master's in public health and working as a shiatsu therapist. But there came a time when Germany itself became a bit small for me, because I always loved languages and I didn't want to live in a just German-speaking country anymore. And so via Lisbon and New York, I came to London in 2001, and the Gherkin was just being built, and Canary Wharf was already there. And so I didn't have a job lined up, and so actually I got the best job that you could have when you're new to London, which is I worked as a German teacher. As a German teacher in business, you get everywhere. If you're employed somewhere, you just see one place. As a German teacher, you see all the places. So I taught at Citigroup in Canary Wharf, I taught at Barclays, I taught at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs, I suppose, is only really fun when you're not a trader. And I taught at the National Gallery and at Deutsche Bank, and I taught at the Treasury. So at one point, there was like Gordon Brown walking past me when I was teaching German. And so why am I telling you all that? I'm now a somatic coach. And so after that, I went into kind of like teaching at women's shelters and for charity. And so I got more into my line of work that I studied for, like public health and people's health and well-being. And so it's a nice kind of metaphor for the body leading the way, and that's on all levels, really. And so it could just be that the body gets a little uncomfortable in the life that we have built for ourselves. Or it could be that we can use more of the resources that we have as the body intelligence, that we can build our intuition, that we can be more creative. And also, if we just like need to breathe again. And that's a nice reason as well. So I invite you all to take a breath. Thank you.
Well done, well done. Okay, taking the applause, lovely. Judges, what would you like to say?
Thank you. Finally, another German. Yeah. So what I'd say is, like, I love how graceful. Like, it's just there's so much grace and really gentleness in that. So I remember when I started speaking, I was always really loud. I don't know. I just thought I had to prove something. So that was really soothing. I love that. As a stretch, I'd say a number of things. Why is she messing with my thing? So, as a stretch, I'd say, I don't know if you notice, like, whenever you speak, it's good to use the stage, like, you know, from the left to the right, it's great. As soon as you step back from them, it just sends, like, subconsciously, a message into them. They're like, I was wondering, why are you doing that? Like, why are you stepping away from your message? Be aware of that. And I'd say, let's work on the structure. That the earlier get where you're taking us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'd say. And I was giving Elaine that feedback, you know, when you did your practice video. Bring us in more. So, you know, when you say things like, you know, I've been a German teacher, you know, the I make it into a you along the lines of who here has learned another language, you know, or things like that. So you make it more about them. I'd say, like, as a stretch, that's the thing for you to do next time.
Thank you.
Wait for it.
She doesn't need the floor at all. I enjoyed the story. The bit that I miss is I don't know, I'm going to ask the audience if that's all right, but at times I didn't feel like you were speaking to us.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all, and it links in with what Anika was saying about stepping backwards. It's almost like you were inside your own head and practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked with B at the back, and we couldn't hear you at the back. So there's a little bit of volume, but the big thing that really stood out for me is that it's like they weren't here, and you weren't involving them in the story. Did anybody feel like that? Just a little bit disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the thing I would get you to really, really think about, is make sure that you're bringing, because your talking, your speaking is about the audience. It's not about you. So they have to come along the journey with you and feel part of it. So that's the thing I would really push yourself on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.